live on the air. I'm Richard Saile.
This is wild.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Lounge Time. I'm your host, Rich Saile, and on today's episode of 2026 Offseason Grades, we are going over the Buffalo Bills, the third team in the AFC East we have covered so far through the 11 episodes we've gone through in this series, and they made a change in head coach, new defensive coordinator, had some draft additions that I'll get into, and free agents. They got some veterans that were able to help, especially one trade that is that move enough to help get them into the Super Bowl this year, or has the window closed? We'll get to that for today's episode on the Bills offseason grade episode. But let's start with the biggest move of their offseason, which was moving on from Sean McDermott following the divisional round playoff loss to the Denver Broncos, and hiring Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, to be the head coach as the piece that finally gets the Bills from oh so close to finally making their first Super Bowl to the 90s. That's what they're hoping Joe Brady is going to do for them this season. Now, I'm going to save my thoughts for him being put into this situation for expectations when we get to the roster and the draft, when I sum up everything. I just want to go over what they did first, and then we'll put it together, because this will be a heavy episode on their total offseason, and is Joe Brady going to be the guy that gets them to the Super Bowl, and is it too much for a first-year head coach? Because I have a lot on that. But let's go over everything right now. So Joe Brady, now the new head coach. Jim Leonhard. For the real ball knowers out there, you remember that name? Yes, he played in the NFL for Rex Ryan's defense. He was Wisconsin's defensive coordinator. If you guys remember, those of you that are college football OGs, he used to be the Wisconsin Badgers defensive coordinator under Paul Chryst, and they had really good defenses down there in the Big Ten before I think he was let go. Or I think he tried somewhere else. I thought he started in the NFL a little bit after he left Wisconsin. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought he made a stop in Denver, and then he ended up getting hired by Buffalo as their defensive coordinator. Sneaky good hire that a lot of people aren't talking about. That move, I think, is going to be one of the most underrated, if not one of my favorite sneaky quiet moves that the Bills made a defensive coordinator, because he can coach, man. That is a really good hire for them. And I remember because Leslie Frazier used to be the Bills DC for a while, and then McDermott started to take on more responsibility because Leslie Frazier retired. Jim Leonhard now is Joe Brady's DC, and I like that hire a lot. Let's go to their free agency, because they lost some key guys in the secondary. Taron Johnson, their nickel corner, who could blitz, he could cover. He's gone. Dane Jackson's gone. Taylor Rapp's gone. So this secondary, which was a shaky unit, the last 2 to 3 years was a little bit shaky. Now, maybe a little more shakier. Curtis Samuel's gone, but that doesn't matter because we're going to talk about the trade very quickly. And that's going to be the DJ Moore trade with the Bears for a second-round pick, and I'm going to make sure I have the actual terms of this trade because I'm going through the whole transaction list. And again, some of these were finalized at the beginning of the league year, but to sum up the free agency news, Geno Stone, if you guys remember him from the Ravens, and then he was with Cincinnati last season, he led the league in interceptions about 2 to 3 years ago. He's now at safety for Taylor Rapp. That wanted to get younger. I understand that. And then Bradley Chubb has had injury issues, but when healthy, he can be a productive pass rusher. Kind of what they were hoping for Joey Bosa last season. Did not work out that well. So the DJ Moore trade, let's get to that because that was the biggest move for them in the offseason. Trying to get Josh Allen a number one receiver. And is DJ Moore that much better than who they have on the roster? Yes, he is. I'm trying to get the actual trade terms and compensation while I'm doing this for you guys. But yes, DJ Moore is way better than anybody that they had on the roster that was the number one. He's more consistent than Khalil Shakir. Keon Coleman has just not panned out. I know they're trying to get him more involved in the offense this year under Joe Brady. He's better than Keon Coleman. And then we'll get to the depth chart. I don't want to go too much into it, but the full trade terms. So the Bills gave up a second-round pick this year for a 2026 fifth-round selection and DJ Moore. Is that a fair trade for what the Bills are trying to do now? Yeah, because as long as you have Josh Allen and you still have James Cook, you have a shot to be an AFC contending threat every single year to win the Super Bowl. So I'm not bashing the trade. I think I understand why the trade makes sense. Now, DJ Moore is getting up there in his late 20s and early 30s, and that's usually where you start to see receivers plateau a little bit. There's very few that do. So I understand people saying that's a lot to give up. Like a high draft pick, like round 2 for a 30-year-old receiver almost. That's a huge roll of the dice. That's a huge roll of the dice. But I understand it from their standpoint because they view DJ Moore as a big missing piece to get to the Super Bowl and finally get there in Josh Allen's tenure with the Bills. So I get that standpoint. I do. But I do think I understand the argument. It is a lot that they gave up because that second round pick, usually those are players that are really good steals. And this was a pretty good draft class. And it was a roll of the dice. Now let's go over their draft class. They started picking in round 2 because they traded out of round 1 and into the early round 2. So they started off with TJ Parker early in round 2, the edge rusher from Clemson. This guy was supposed to be a top 5-10 pick. And he fell all the way down to the early round 2. Shock. My opinion, very top of the board among top steals in the draft. He is very, very good. And I'm a little worried as a Pats fan because this guy, if they could figure out what happened last year, why he wasn't productive, and they could bring back what he was supposed to be if he declared last year, oh man, this guy, he could be a very productive pass rusher. Davison Igbenogson from Ohio State, the corner. I remember him. Lengthy corner. They need some size in the secondary. He can run too. So they needed a tall corner because Maxwell Harrison has not panned out at all. Now, Skylar Bell, the wide receiver from UConn in round 4. This is another steal. Again, he might be a guy that, truthfully, he could be a guy that plays some snaps in the next 2 to 3 years. This guy is really, really good. It is a crowded receiver room as far as who Allen's been comfortable with Shakir, Keon Coleman, and now he's got to get used to DJ Moore. I'm going to go over the depth chart in a little bit, but Skylar Bell, I would not be surprised at all if he elevates significantly on this depth chart late in December and January, because this dude, when you're up there for the best receiver in college football awards, he's going to get playing time this year. He's going to. In 4 or 5 wide receiver packages. This is another great steal in the draft. How he fell to round 4, middle of round 4, I'm baffled by. Caleb Elam's-Orr, the linebacker from TCU, very tall, rangy. He's got great size and good speed at the position. I really like that pick for them. They needed an athletic linebacker. It's been a need they've been waiting for years, especially because Milano's gone, and it just has not worked out for them. Zane Durant, defensive tackle from Penn State, is another notable name. Good. He's a good player. And again, Penn State had a down year, but if they can ever unlock that potential of what he could be a nice steal in the draft. He could be a very good, productive player that swaps in some downs, and good rotational defensive tackle behind Ed Oliver and Deion Walker. So, I'm not going to go too much in the depth chart real quick, but I'm going to go over it briefly because I want to save something big for this show. This is really the meat and potatoes of the show coming up. But let's go over the draft the roster, the depth chart I meant to say. We know the offense is going to be big time. Joe Brady's going to be calling plays. You still got Allen. You still got James Cook. DJ Moore is going to be a heavy focal point because he's now going to be the one. You can line up him in the slot, outside. He's going to have a very productive year for Joe Brady with where they can line him up. Shakir also can be in the slot. Keon Coleman I expect to be primarily on the outside. Now, behind him, you've got Skylar Bell, who I think is going to get significant playing time. And he's a guy that I would see more on the outside because you've got Shakir and Moore that'll play in the slot. But Moore can play in or out. But I think Skylar Bell will be mostly an outside receiver this year and then work into the slot once they find out if he's ready to take on an elevated role into the starting role. But it's tough this season. McCall Hardman, he's a speedster. He's a guy they'll probably mix in some gadget plays with. Tyrell Shavers, he's good. Again, it's a really tough receiver room to kind of break out and start. And then you got Trent Sherfield, who was a blocker a little bit in Miami, but he was another guy that made plays. But again, he's buried way down the depth chart. I'm not going to go too much there. They still got Joshua Palmer from the Chargers, who was really good with the Chargers a couple years back. And had moments last year where it was like flashes, and then he did really good. But they still got the tight end duo of Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. So those guys will always be featured in two tight end sets. And then the offensive line, which is still top 5, top 10 level good. Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, one of the very good tackle duos in the league. And the interior, the guards, center, they're good. And their depth is very solid at guard. So I am not worried about this offensive line at all. That's just why I'm not spending too much time. This roster is already built to still be Super Bowl level good this year at least. The defense, this is where we need to see if Sean McDermott and what his defensive genius was. Jim Leonhard, I think, will have a very good unit. I want to be very clear on this. He will have a very good unit. Does this defense elevate because they were number 1 against the pass last year and they were not so good against the run? Are they elevating to a more balanced defense where they're good defending the pass and the run, or do they take a step back a bit? That's what I want to see this year from this Bills defense, because they could defend the pass really well, but they couldn't defend the run well until later in the year. Even then, they didn't defend it that great. That's where I want to see. Did they get physical enough to stop the run? TJ Sanders, TJ Parker, I don't know if that's a typo. No, it's not. Deion Walker, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, and then Bradley Chubb. This is a very good rotation piece of edge rushers. It is. Ed Oliver's more of an interior rusher with Deion Walker, with Zane Durant. That's a good interior rotation. But when you look at Rousseau, Chubb, and TJ Parker with Sanders, it's a nice rotation. Like, that's a great luxury to be deep at edge rusher. Dorian Williams is more of that coverage linebacker role that can defend the run at a pretty solid rate. Terrell Bernard will be taking over for Matt Milano. That's a huge role that the Bills are going to miss this year, because that guy did a lot of things well, made the calls and checks on defense very good at diagnosing plays. I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen him just flow to the ball and run defense and run support. Decent in coverage, but he made some very solid plays there. They're going to miss his leadership and the ways he could cover up a lot of what that defense was missing. Now, when he was hurt, it showed. But Milano's not there anymore, so big responsibility for Terrell Bernard. This secondary, to me, is their biggest problem because even though this was a defense that was number one against the pass majority of the season, they have still some glaring problems that somehow always get exposed in the playoffs. Christian Benford is a solid corner. I don't think he's a number one option. Cole Bishop, Geno Stone, very good safety duo. DeMar Hamlin mixes in a couple times, and they go three safeties. Maxwell Harrison, I don't think has panned out. That's why they got Bignerson from Ohio State. And then C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he's played, and the slot he's played, deep safety before. So he's kind of that nickel guy that he's not afraid to cover anybody in the slot. He's good at tackling in the run game, so that's a good versatile chess piece to have. But I still think this group is a little thin at corner that would not shock me if they get exposed once again in the postseason because they keep giving up big plays and some critical downs. And that's been the issue when they play teams that have very good to solid passing attacks. Denver, Kansas City over the years, that's who they've lost to. Cincinnati had a very good passing attack a couple years back too, and they beat them in Buffalo. So they're going to have to defend the pass this postseason, especially against teams that can throw the ball that are not afraid to do it. And they're going to need a good complementary defense. So my challenge with them as a depth chart standpoint, can their defensive deficiencies be covered up in the playoffs where they get matchups that favor them well? Which we thought last year, and they couldn't take advantage of it. That's what I want to see. Because their secondary gets exposed, and whatever they're weak after the year on defense always comes back to bite them. And that's my biggest question because I'm not judging them too much on the regular season anymore. They're in a tier of teams where we don't judge them in the regular season, we judge them strictly on postseason production. That's just the way we go about it. Which leads me to the biggest thing I want to talk about for this offseason grade episode before we get into the record prediction and my grade. Let me give you guys a known fact, and I'm going to say this in a later episode for another team in particular because they're both in the same boat. Okay? So listen carefully. There has been one rookie NFL head coach to take a team to the Super Bowl in his very first year and win it all. I want you to pause the video and think who that person is for that moment. I know the answer. I want to see. Guarantee you a lot of guys will not get this answer right. Unless you're a real ball knower, which mad respect to you if you do. Okay, just think about it for a moment. I know the answer. Okay, so that person is George Seifert. And George Seifert took Bill Walsh's team that Bill Walsh built year one of the Super Bowl because Bill Walsh had built a dynasty there in the late 80s, or entire 1980s. But George Seifert took over in 1989. Okay? So basically I handed a Bill Walsh Super Bowl team. There has not been anyone close since. If we're talking about strictly first-year rookie head coaches. I'm not talking about guys that when they get there their first year that have coached before. That's a whole different category. This is not this situation. Okay? So this is where I'm going to go now. And I'm not mad. I'm just trying to make a point here. The media is expecting Joe Brady to be an improvement over Sean McDermott, what he could not do. And I think this is a lot of pressure and expectations for a first-year head coach who has not coached 1 second of being an NFL head coach in the NFL. And you're asking him to take a team, which I know roster-wise and the quarterbacks, the quarterback is really good. Great. Yes, I understand that he has a great team to take over and get to Super Bowl. And again, I understand the chances are not like most first-year situations for first-year head coaches. I will say there's been guys that have gotten close, but they haven't won it their first year. Rex Ryan with the Jets comes to mind. John Harbaugh with the Ravens when he was a rookie head coach. Okay? Even guys that were rookie head coaches, they needed more time to get there. Mike McDonald is a perfect example. He took year 2 to get to a Super Bowl. Okay? Sean McVay took 2 years to get to a Super Bowl. He lost, but he got 2 years to get to a Super Bowl. I just think it is way too much pressure and expectation for a first-year rookie head coach to take a team to the Super Bowl in year 1. It's astronomically impossible for somebody to do that their first year. I understand the Bills roster is Super Bowl ready. I get all that. But the pressure, when the AFC, I'm going to say it again, you'll see me talk about this in the series. There is a good 10 teams. I can make a legitimate argument to make a playoff push this year. I can make an argument for 10 teams. On my hand, I can tell you. I'm not going to do that because I want to save the show strictly for them. But I just think to be the last team standing in a loaded AFC this year. Loaded AFC. Okay? You got their division rival New England. Okay? You got 2 to 3 teams in the North. Really 2 in my mind. Okay? The South, I think it's really Houston. And then you got a couple good teams. The AFC West is a good 2 to 3 teams that can make a strong argument to make the playoffs. And then you got like the Colts and Jaguars in the South that if things all go well, they could maybe be in the mix because they've been right there. Jacksonville made the playoffs last year. Colts been always that team that just can't get into that 7 seed. But that's not, my point is this. It is very hard to be the last team standing and to have that kind of big jump for a first-year head coach to be, you have to get us to the Super Bowl and win. Immense pressure and expectation that I don't even think is realistic for year 1. It takes time. And the numbers and the history back me up on it. I'm not backing off that stance. So, whatever. You guys can disagree with me. I just think it's way too much pressure and expectations for a first-year head coach. I do think if they make the championship game, that's a good season for Joe Brady. But to say that he's got to make the Super Bowl and win it in his very first year, when he has not he's not coached a minute as being an NFL head coach, he's going on his first year as a rookie head coach. No. Way too much pressure and expectations. Let's go to the schedule because, listen, they're going to get to the playoffs. I'm not worried about them. They'll be fine. I will say game 1 at Houston is a very tough draw, game 1. And I am currently grading the Texans as I'm recording this. I don't think they beat the Texans game 1. Because the Texans have Josh Allen's number lately. DeMeco Ryans had a great game plan in the Thursday night regular season matchup last year. I'm giving them a loss at Houston. Home for the Lions on a short week in the new stadium. I'm giving them a win, 1-1. Home for the Chargers. Chargers got to go all the way cross country. I'll give you a win there. New England in Buffalo. I'll give you a win, 3-1. In the Rams. At the Rams on a Monday night. I'm giving you guys a loss there because the Rams are really good. Coin flip game. I know they beat them in LA 4 years ago. I'm still saying 3-2. At Las Vegas. Win. 4-2. I'm not even hesitating there. So you're 4-2 going into the bye week. After the bye week, you got to play home to the Ravens, which they're also in the same boat, but I'm saving it for their episode. I'm going to give you guys a win at Baltimore. I'm going to go 5-2. At Minnesota on a Monday night. Brian Flores with that blitzing scheme. I don't like what Minnesota's done. I'm going to say 6-2. I'll give you that win. At the Jets, 7-2. I don't think the Jets are doing anything. Miami at home. Now, okay. Miami always gets them when you least expect it. They do. It's not going to be in Buffalo, though. I'm going to say, what are we at now? 8-2. I think they're going to be riding high. Now they're home for Kansas City. Now, It's a Thursday night. It's Thanksgiving night game. I'm going to give you guys a loss to the Chiefs at home. Even though I know they've had their number in Buffalo when they play. I just think they're going to lose a game in November. At New England on a Sunday after Thanksgiving. You're going to split with the Patriots. That's 2 losses in a row. So we are sitting at now 8-4 for the Bills going into the final 4 weeks. No, 5 weeks. Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah, 5 weeks. Okay. At Green Bay, you beat Green Bay. Home for Chicago. I'll give you a win there. So 10-4. At Denver, loss. At Denver, loss. So now we're at 10-5. Now this is where their surprise loss happens. And weirdly enough, I think it might be Miami in week 17. Because you're going from these cold weather cities in Buffalo and Green Bay and Chicago and Denver. And Miami, watch, is going to be that one game where, yes, they'll need it. But they're going to lose because somehow, some way, Miami always gets them that one game you don't expect. So I'm going to say they lose at Miami as the shocking upset loss. Everybody has this too, okay? And then they beat the Jets at home to go to, I have 11-6. I'll count the losses so everybody's got it on note. At Houston, at the Rams, home for the Chiefs, at New England, at Denver, and I think they're going to lose at Miami in week 17. So I'm saying 11-6 for the Bills this year. Good enough to make the playoffs in a stacked AFC. They will be fighting for the division with my New England Patriots. Yes, it's just the expectations. We have to pipe down a little bit and be realistic for a first-year head coach. Definitely can make the playoffs. Definitely win a playoff game, depending on matchup. But to say he has to get to the Super Bowl and win year one, no, I can't go there. Which leads me to the offseason grade for the Bills. I'm going with a B because I do like the Jim Leonhard hire at defensive coordinator. I do. I think they had a nice draft. I think they added good quality veterans. DJ Moore, I thought they gave up a little too much for in the trade. I understand why they made the move, but for a receiver that's 29 who might plateau soon, I think that's going to be a lot. So I am going with a B for the Buffalo Bills 2026 offseason grade. So that is the episode on the Buffalo Bills. Make sure you guys follow the series, 2026 offseason grades. We're going to have it all the way up until the preseason or week 1 in September. My goal is to have this before game 1 of the season, so that way you guys can get all of the preseason playoff predictions, early Super Bowl predictions, so that way you guys have it all ready to go, lining up into game 1. Make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so that way you guys can get all the latest content. We are on the way to 50 subs. We're 6 away. Thank you to all those that have supported the channel and continue to follow the channel. Your support means so much to me, and I appreciate you all. We're 6 subscribers to 50. Got to help us get there. You can also follow me at LoungeTimePod on X. Yes, I will tweet during some NFL preseason action. I don't think I'm going to tweet a lot, but I will be definitely tweeting for some game 1 action. So if you have a question for the show, feel free to tweet it out. I will give you your couple of minutes to answer this question without a doubt. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Lounge Time. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next episode of the 2026 offseason grades.